Hey guys, so this is new. I'm trying to record videos as I drive because honestly this is the only time it seems like that I have free time right now for the foreseeable future because of my regular full-time job and my art business that I'm trying to run. I rigged up my camera in my car. At least you can see my face even though you are mostly seeing my steering wheel. Have you ever been in a situation where you're dealing with someone that you think is a narcissist and you're kind of watching their behavior and you're kind of studying their behavior and you're starting to see patterns and characteristics about them that make you think, boy, this person might be a narcissist, and I can't really tell because they exhibit some signs but they don't exhibit these other signs. At least for me, I definitely went through that when I first started doing the research and learning what a narcissist was. I've become a little bit more educated on those kinds of things. I posted a video a couple days ago about two very specific characteristics that I picked up on quite quickly, but I use the analogy of a narcissist goes through hobbies like they go through underwear. It's not just that a narcissist goes through hobbies like they go through underwear. It's like the narcissist goes through hobbies, like picks up new hobbies and disposes of hobbies like they go through Fendi underwear. Like, we're talking expensive. It's not like Calvin Klein that's like upscale underwear. We're talking expensive. So the narcissist is not thinking anything about the money. They don't care about the money. They're very impulsive. And the only reason they're spending the money and picking up on these hobbies is because of the new person or the new people that they're trying to impress. So it really has nothing to do with them or their true interests or genuine passion or talent that they have. It is purely just to impress particular people. So that's what it's tied to. And that video was something I wanted to put out there because I didn't find that trait of a narcissist being discussed too much in my research. And the thing is, even though it's not a diagnosable type of a characteristic like the grandiosity and the lack of empathy and those other characteristics are, those two traits to me were very obvious with a couple of different highly narcissistic people that I have encountered in my life. So that's why I wanted to do that video and upload that video, because if you're on the fence with someone as far as you're not quite sure if they're a narcissistic individual or not, and you're trying to characterize their behavior or educate yourself on what their behavior is, if you're trying to just educate yourself on narcissism and try to identify whether you're dealing with a narcissistic individual, these I think are videos that are helpful because they're traits that aren't talked about a whole lot in the psychiatry or psychological community. They're traits that are just not talked about very much at all, if at all, because these are traits that I noticed myself, and they just so happen to be ones that I have actually heard doctors reference when I dug deep into my research. But I literally had to dig to find out if these traits were really signs of a narcissist, and come to find out that's the only reason that I did the videos is because I did get, sorry about the sunshine, because I did get verification through professional resources that they can be very much so signs of a highly narcissistic individual. Now, like all disorders and all traits, not every narcissist is going to have every characteristic, see, because there are different kinds of narcissists. So there was another characteristic that I thought of the other day that is really appropriate to bring up, because it's one of those characteristics, again, that is not really talked about a lot, but is so prevalent in a narcissist. A lot of times in the psychological community, you'll hear professionals talk about or refer to the silent treatment as a sign or a symptom or characteristic of a narcissistic individual. The narcissist oftentimes will give you the silent treatment as a form of manipulation and control. They want you to, well, their goal is to make you feel guilty in order to get you to comply. And their way of doing that is to give you the silent treatment. Their effort is to make you feel bad. It's like a staring contest in children. Who can blink first? Who can knuckle under first? The narcissist is going to give you the silent treatment until you bend and give up. That's the way, and that's their way of knowing that they've won. The silent treatment from a narcissist can be long periods of time, like hours or days, where they don't say a word to you or ignore you if you try to talk to them. But a narcissist's silent treatment can also be not looking at you when you talk to them. You ask them a question and they give you one-word responses if it's like a yes-no thing. If you're trying to resolve a disagreement, they're going to give you short one-word answers. They're not going to look you in the eye. They're going to behave in this way in an effort to make you feel like crap and to make you feel as though you've screwed up and you've done something horribly wrong. And of course, you're not going to understand it. And it's their manipulation tactic. That is what the silent treatment is. That's what they use. Now, oftentimes, this is what I've seen. I've seen the silent treatment in use. My dad has used it with me when I was younger. I've referenced that in my abuse series. So narcissists will often use the silent treatment, but they will also use ignoring and cold shoulders to manipulate you. And here is what I witnessed in my narcissistic ex-coworker that I've referenced a lot in this content. This is what I noticed about her after working with her for a year and a half, 2 years, when I really started to notice a pattern of her behavior towards me. And that it was specifically targeted towards me. But generally speaking, most of the time, my coworker, my narcissistic ex-coworker, and our part-time auditor and myself were the first 3 people in the office in the morning. I picked up on this habit from my narcissistic ex-coworker probably 5 or 6 different times before I finally acknowledged to myself, you know, this behavior that she's exhibiting is not normal. It's not something that she displays or does to anyone else in the office, because I watched it many times and waited and observed and kept tabs on how she was interacting with others, and whether it was just me, whether it was just my imagination, or whether it was legitimately a specific type of behavior towards me. And I always wanted to be fair and reasonable. So anytime that I thought, maybe I'm imagining this, maybe I'm being overly sensitive, which when you're raised by a narcissist or in a narcissistic family system, that is something that's ingrained in your mind is, you know, you're overreacting, you're making assumptions, you're jumping to conclusions, you're being hypersensitive, you're so and so and so. And you always second guess yourself. You always find yourself going, maybe it's just me. Maybe I'm imagining things. Maybe I'm overreacting. Maybe I'm being hypersensitive. You always find yourself second guessing yourself. And that's the norm for an individual who is raised in a narcissistic family. So but of course I didn't know that at the time. So I started paying really close attention to how she was behaving, in particular with me, and in particular with my coworkers, to see if there was a pattern with just me or with other coworkers. And this is what would happen with the 3 of us that were the first to arrive at work in the morning back then. A conversation would start, whoever started the conversation, whether it was me, whether it was her, or whether it was the auditor. And all 3 of us would be involved in this conversation. We'd be given our little, comments or thoughts or whatever. And every single time that I spoke up in the conversation, she would turn her back to me and to the auditor and the conversation, because it was kind of a central office area. And she would turn back to her computer and continue to work. And then when the auditor spoke up and I was quiet for a moment, she would turn back and contribute to the conversation. Then if I responded to the auditor or spoke up again or acknowledged what he said, then she'd turn back to her computer every single time. It was every single time I spoke up that she turned away from me. She didn't want me to speak up. She didn't want me to be part of the conversation. There was an issue with the auditor though, because he was a big enabler, completely blind to her behavior, and therefore he let it go. It was nearly impossible for me to get to the point where I could say, hey, there's this pattern of behavior that's happening. I need a witness. Can you speak up or watch for this? Or, of course, I'm educated now and I wasn't back then. So that plays a huge role when you don't know what's going on or why someone's behaving a certain way. Like, I would see her behaving like this or witness this pattern of behavior with her, and I had no idea what was going on. In my mind, all I could think of was, why does she hate me so much? That was the only thing. I could not figure out why she hated me so much, but it had nothing to do with hate. It was so much more than just her disliking me. And that's the thing about understanding narcissism. That's such a huge gift, is once you become educated on what narcissism is and what narcissistic abuse is, and you know what to watch for, you can actually combat it. You can actually do something about it. It's an oxymoron to think about, because you actually can do something about and combat narcissism by actually being educated in an effort to not react and do nothing about it. You know what I mean? So it sounds opposite of what you're actually really doing. You're doing something by not doing anything, or technically it's not reacting. And not giving any fuel or supply to the narcissist. So, like I said, something to watch for is someone who is not only, they might be giving you the silent treatment, but it's not always just the silent treatment. Sometimes it's the cold shoulder or ignoring you when you ask a question. And my narcissistic ex-coworker religiously would turn her back to me whenever I started to talk. In particular, if there was just a couple people in the office, like in the mornings, I would say, I could walk in the door and those two would already be there, and there might not be a conversation going on between the two of them, and I might walk in and say, oh my gosh, the roads are slippery, because in the winter it snows where I live. And he would respond, but she would not at all. And then if he said, oh yeah, on my way in, I saw an accident at the intersection of such and such highway and such highway, then she'd turn around and say, oh yeah, I heard about that. Yeah, the roads are real slick. I almost went in the ditch. And she would say something, but then if I said, oh my gosh, I'm glad you didn't go in the ditch or something like that, she'd turn her back on me and start working again. It's like she didn't even acknowledge. It was difficult for her to even acknowledge that I was part of the conversation. And it was nearly impossible for her to even bear my involvement in the conversation. It was almost like she couldn't stand to even acknowledge that I was part of the office, much less part of the conversation. My existence or whatever bothered her that much. Basically, a narcissist can't handle you. They can't handle your existence. What you represent as a person, a good person, a narcissist can't handle, because your very existence makes them feel threatened about themselves, because they know, remember, they're trying to put this facade and this false self out to the world, and they want everybody to believe in it, when really deep down inside they're this broken, vulnerable 3-year-old child still in the core of their being, and you threaten that by your pure existence and your genuineness about who you are as a person. It is a threat to them. They want you to not get to the truth. They want you to just nod and smile and go along with and accept and believe in everything they present, everything they say is true in their life, and all the lies and the stories and the grandiosity that they have to tell. All the yarns they want to weave, they just want to suck you right in. And the minute you hesitate on any part of their false self, you got the bullseye on your back. Everything about me called attention to the fact that she was fake. And she didn't want that. It drove her nuts. It irritated her demons. My expectation in human resources for everyone to be treated decently and respectfully and kindly went against everything that she was about. She wanted and expected adherence and control and superiority, and that just didn't align with the goal in human resources to treat people justly and fairly and respectfully. She needed compliance from everyone, and she needed acceptance from everyone. I never bought the lies that she told and the false self that she presented. And that was horrible for her. That was absolutely devastating for her. So anytime I chimed into a conversation, it was like I was slapping her upside the face. That's how she felt. She would not consciously think about what she was doing, but it was that body language. She was communicating to me clearly that what I had to say was irrelevant by virtue of her turning her back on me and her shutting me off or cutting me off out of the conversation. It was her effort to communicate non-verbally to me that whatever I had to say was not important enough for her to even acknowledge or listen to or respond to or interact with. So watch for this symptom, watch for this trait and this habit that a narcissistic individual will exhibit. You'll know it when you see it, and pay attention. These kinds of traits are not exhibited every single day by a narcissist. It's just the kind of trait that you would observe over time if you're paying attention and if you educate yourself on narcissism. So thanks guys so much for tuning in to Whole Wellness with Ann. I appreciate your attention, and hopefully this video was helpful for you. So with that, thanks guys so much for tuning in. I'm sorry about my steering wheel. I will try to rig the camera up a little bit better next time and see if I can't continue recording during my commute. Take care of you as always. Have a great day. Bye.